So we talked about propaganda and how propaganda had been used before, but really became a noteworthy tool during the First War as a way of motivating people to get behind a cause. And the way they portrayed the Germans as like evil guerrillas that were after Western Europe and portrayed them as evil. And so we took a look at some examples of recruiting posters using propaganda and things like that. So always pause and give context. You know, there was a discussion about Lenin and the revolution. I said, let me pause right there and let me tell you. So there was an initial revolution. Lenin's in exile in Germany, and here's what happens. And then this guy here is in after the Tsar was deposed, is under house arrest out in the Crimea. This guy takes over, but he's not really good. So Lenin comes back. You know, said, and Lenin worried, the Bolsheviks worried the conservative Russians in Russia. So when Lenin finally takes over, there's a group of conservative Russians that are concerned about his power grab. And so we end up in a civil war, the Reds versus the Whites. And at this point is when Lenin had to sue for peace. And so they gave up territory. So I showed them a current map. I said, over here where Belarus and Poland are, that was Germany and Russia. They were shared a border. And so we talked about the two-front war. And so the video still paused, and the kids were like, how do you remember all this? So I'm like, I like history. So
teaching it for a while too.
Yeah. So and they enjoy the stories. Then we go back to the video, and then we start talking about why it was easy to recruit men to fight in the war because of sense of duty and honor and nationalism. So I pause and I tell them, I said, y'all need to understand during this time period in World War I and even World War II, it was easy to get get young men motivated to join because, you know, like in the First War, you're fighting the Germans, and it should have been a regional conflict, but they're fighting the Germans. Germans were viewed as the aggressor because they were an economic power. They had been building up their military for several years, since like 1868. They've been building up their navy. They built these dreadnoughts, and their battleships, and then Britain was in an arms race with them, and so we started talking about that a little bit. I said, so you had 16-year-old men.
And now we have 16-year-olds who don't even want to get their driver's license.
Yeah.
What happened?